Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes.
All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. All kids out.
Lego Lord of the Rings Balrog raised eyebrows for what some fans say is an unfortunate pose. I see it. I see it. Oh, I see it. It's taking a piss on Gandalf.
You shall not!
Before you go, one question.
Yes?
Where in the galaxy is Sanusi?
Show us your tits and I'll tell you.
There we go. All better now. Man, titties are the greatest things on Earth.
Hail and howdy, everybody. Welcome back to the Daily Dive, the double D's, where you, the audience, steer this rudderless ship. That's what happens. You guys make things happen, and we do our best to have a good time. But I hope everybody's having a good Wednesday so far. I guess I'm all right. All right. I had, I guess, what you can call sleep last night. We've started our day. We're ready to go through it, and we are catching up with stuff we didn't get done yesterday. Right now, I'll say a correction from yesterday's schedule. We didn't get to what we're now calling Chat Made Me Play These Games. We didn't get to House Flipper yesterday because I ran out of time. Tuesdays right now for the moment are a going out day, and my car isn't available till late in the afternoon. So by the time I went out and came back and ate dinner, got cleaned up, I hadn't had enough time to set everything up appropriate test. So tonight, because unfortunately it's not a complete Warhammer Wednesdays, we have to reschedule Space Marine 2 to tomorrow night on Thursday. So I don't have an official game. So I, of course, want to play more Take the Grailfall of Avalon, but we must adhere to the rules. We must fulfill our commitments. We will play at least 30 minutes of House Flipper tonight. Live stream. I can't say an exact time. Just it'll usually up here 30 minutes before start time. So keep your eyes open for it. And we will have, I guess, okay time with that. From what I understand, it's a rather inoffensive game. It's just a game. And I know that Prof decided to go easy on me before he sends something else nightmarish down my avenue and park in front of my house and likely be offensively naked. So what's going to happen there? All right, so that's tonight. Rest of the day, though, stay tuned for this show right here. Keep watching right now. It's Warhammer Wednesdays. I'm sure when Kel arrives, we'll be watching something pertaining to the Emperor. Today it's going to be something about the Emperor, which we kind of did on purpose. It started that way, and then it has good because last week we did get news regarding the Emperor in 40K lore. So we'll kind of throw that into the discussion, I'm sure. And other than that, it's just a regular day. It's a regular day. Hit that like button, guys. Hit the like button. It's not hard. It helps. It also helps if you super chat me and send tips. Because for $5, you get an Adam rant on something of your choosing. Just boom, right, bang, pow. No preparation. I'll see it and I'll go. Has to be within the realm of reason. Usually pop culture, entertainment related. Or something extremely stupid. $10 to ask me a simple question. Adam, what do you think of this? How do you feel like that? Are you ready for this? And it's generally another pop culture entertainment question where we can go down a rabbit hole together and have a nice time, talk a little bit. $10 to rent me to play video games for 30 minutes, which, as I said, we will be doing tonight with House Flipper. $15 to have me react to a article I show you or one you may be sitting on. I'll give you a hot take. off the cuff, no preparation whatsoever. Just my new and burgeoning thoughts. $20 if you watch a video, and $30 to have me basically do a live on-stream review of an episode of television or a movie that you want, which we just completed a bunch last week, and we have another one scheduled for tomorrow. The Disaster Artist. I don't know what I'm getting into with that. But at the same time, we also have $30 from Kratos El Grados from last night. At some point, he put this up here, and I see it now. New Internet Historian video dropped today. Pick a slow day to watch it. It's an hour and a half. Yes, I did see that Internet Historian dropped a new video, and we'll watch that tomorrow. We will watch that tomorrow because we don't have anything else scheduled tomorrow at the moment. So we will do that tomorrow. So thank you, Kratos, for the $30. So there you go, guys. Them's the rules, as they always are. Hail and howdy to everybody in the chat who are joining us right now. Hit that like button, guys. I ask you. It's a simple request from me, and I hope you heed it. It helps. We're trying to get me back on a rhythm with the algorithm. I did not intend to say that because it beat me up the past 2 weeks. It just took me out back behind the barn, had its way with me, and left me there. So we want to try and get back to strong. So hit that like button, hit it, push it, tap it. It's not hard. It shows the algorithm you care. And you being here is also caring. So thank you guys for being here. And yes, we love Selma Hayek. That's why she's in the intro. I see that, and it makes me smile because she is an outstandingly beautiful woman with really big tits. And I love it. All right, so what do we got today? I do have a warm-up. It is some news that's going around. I'm sure it'll pop up in the news feed when we cover the news, but I do have something I want to talk about because I've been thinking about it since I found it on my doom scrolling and seeing that everybody else is starting to talk about this. Here's the thing. We give Disney lots of shit around here. We give Disney lots of shit. And when they fail, we have to say you failed. But when they make what appears to be good business decisions, we have to, of course, acknowledge it. And this first part of this is not necessarily a good business decision. The second one is a smart play, but the reaction seems to be backfiring. So what am I talking about? Well, Disney made a couple of announcements today. They made a couple of announcements. And hold on a second. There's a hair on my lens there, and I can't concentrate when it's in my eye and eyesight. Disney made a couple of announcements today about essentially streaming. The first is totally predictable. We kind of all knew it was going to happen eventually. We just didn't think it was going to be so soon. And why didn't that share? Browser access screen. What? Wait, it's not sharing my screen. What are you doing? What are you doing? I can't do a StreamYard if you don't share the screen. Browser can't access your screen. Try capturing a different screen. This continues. Okay, I'm going to have to kill the screen. Let me kill the screen. Let's try sharing a different screen. Just so I can check. Okay, that's working. Okay, that's working. Maybe it was a... all right, let me try bringing it back. Sorry, guys. StreamYard chicanery. All right, so... let's try bringing it back up now. It doesn't seem to want to share Firefox. Hold on one second. Let's try again. Okay, let's try again. No, it doesn't want to share Firefox. Okay, give me a moment. Let me move everything over to... I got to move all these tabs over to Chrome real quick. I apologize for this. This is some stupidity from StreamYards. I apologize. I can't know these things are going to happen until I start to do them. Fortunately, we do run two browsers during this stream, so we are capable of pivoting, and adjusting to problems when they arise. Okay, so as I was saying, Disney did a couple of things today. One, It announced with very predictable movements that they will be integrating Hulu into Disney Plus throughout 2026. This was a foregone conclusion as soon as they completed the purchase of Hulu. There was no way that, in my opinion, Disney was going to maintain another subscription service and have it compete with itself. The optics just look stupid because most people would not connect Hulu to Disney. They would think, oh, I love Hulu. No, but you also love Disney, don't you? Wait, Hulu is Disney? It's something that the normies wouldn't connect, even though they might be paying for it. They wouldn't really connect it. They would think Hulu and not Disney Plus. So this is not a surprise that Disney is going to integrate everything on Hulu into Disney Plus. Now, that is an interesting turn of events for the simple fact that Hulu is the home of very adult content, which Disney Plus is not a home for. So, and when I say adult, I don't mean the porn. I mean simply hardcore action, dramas, adult situations, stuff like that. It's interesting. It's interesting that they are taking that risk by assimilating Hulu's content into there. It's not a surprise, but it's interesting that they're leaving, that they're going to have to deal with that, is what I'm saying. So this is not a surprise. It's interesting things. And in the end, I don't know if it's a good or a bad idea, to be honest. I don't know. It probably saves Disney Plus, but how's it going to look to people who like whatever shows are still on Hulu saying, oh, watch it on Disney Plus? Disney Plus has a bad stigma attached to it. It has negative history. People purposefully do not purchase, watch, buy into Disney Plus. So with this little thing going on here, I think we got a problem. I think we got a problem in the end. I think that's my conclusion after talking it out with you guys. I think we have a problem. I think that this will backfire in a way, and people are not going to want to keep watching those shows, and they'll find another way to watch them. Ahoy. Other thing that they did today, they announced, and this is good business, but it's bad. It's going to have a bad reaction from what I'm seeing. We've also learned that with the new ESPN app launching through Disney next year, they will basically be buying the pay-per-view rights, or PPL, whatever they call them. I'll still call it a pay-per-view. They'll be buying the event options, live event options from TKO Sports. They're licensing it in a $1.6 billion deal in the hopes that people will pay $30 a pop to subscribe to the ESPN app. That's a massive risk. It's a good gamble because wrestling, even though I don't watch it anymore, I don't care. It's not the wrestling that I grew up with, not even the wrestling of 10 years ago, which I was still somewhat interested in. Wrestling doesn't do it for me anymore, but wrestling is still massively popular. But it's popular with a new crowd. It's not the old school crowd anymore. And this new crowd may not care that it's going to be on ESPN, but there are people out there who do. This is receiving very mixed reactions from the internet. Some people are like, fine, whatever. Some people are like, oh, hell no, I ain't watching this on ESPN. Now, this is also a good move to try and keep ESPN relevant because ESPN is no longer relevant. Let's be honest. I don't watch sports anymore, but I do know that ESPN has lost all of its power, all of its influence. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. All the agenda-driven damage done to it over the past 5 or 6 years has had a lasting effect. So the fact that they are trying to inject something that is still popular and makes a ton of money into ESPN to try and make it relevant again, it's a good business move, but it may backfire because you may not retain a large chunk of the audience to buy the ESPN app. Some will do it because they're robots and lemmings and sheeple. They'll do it. And a lot of the people who watch this now kind of are. Yeah, we should have it. They kind of are. But now, I don't know. I think it's good business, and I think it's you're gonna piss off your actual customer base who don't want anything to do with Disney. This comes back to the first part of this conversation. ESPN is Disney. Nobody wants to have interactions with Disney. People want to limit how much Disney is a part of their lives. So, good move, TKO and Disney, but from a business statement stance, but this could backfire massively. I don't know if people are going to pay $30 a month. $30 a month. I saw it. $29.99. $30 a month for this to get this ESPN streaming service. Wow. We really are at that point where streaming really is all cable again. Between everything you pay for, you're essentially paying for cable still. It's just the new version. It really is there. $30 here, $10 here, another $10 there, another $10 there. By the time you're done, you're spending $100 a month on all this shit, and I very much doubt you watch a lot of it. So it's a risk, it's a gamble. It may pay off, it may blow up in their face. I have a feeling it's not going to go over as well as TKO thinks. So there you go. There you go. That's my opening gambit here. All right, so that's that. I mean, it's not TKO wrestling. TKO just owns it. It's a thing. I mean, they own it. They bought it a year or so ago. They completed the merger, which led to the ousting of Vince with all his stuff and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm just not into wrestling anymore. I'm not. I know some people are hanging on. It's not what I enjoy anymore. It's gone far. I at least there was also a period of time where I could at least get into the video games, but I can't even get into the games anymore because they're not good. They're not good anymore either. And if I'm not going to play the game, I'm not going to watch it, then I can't combine it. I don't know anybody on the I don't know anybody really on the rosters anymore. They keep bringing back people I am familiar with, but it's not going to get me to watch again. It really isn't. All right, so there you go. That's my opening gambit. All right, so Kel for $20 for today's Warhammer video. Let's check it out real quick and see what it is. I believe it, as I said, I believe it's the Emperor. I believe it's video. Come on, load. My DMs load so slow these days. Yeah, was the Emperor right? Ooh, I've been seeing this one pop up for a while now. I've been hoping we could watch that one. I've been seeing that one pop up. Yeah, it's just generic. WWE is not wrestling more. It's very generic. It's very dumbed down. And there's too many belts. The storylines aren't interesting. I used to at least think all the chicks were hot, but the chicks are like 50-50 on their hotness now, the divas. And I will always say divas. Fuck everybody. Oh, we call them superstars. I know they're divas. I'm still going to call them divas. It's like 50-50 on if the divas are hot. So it's just not fun anymore. It's not fun. All right, but and also let's see if this will share. Hang on, let's see if this will share if I have to, because this is for Warhammer Wednesday, and I want to share it. Nope, doesn't want to. Why don't you want to share Firefox today? Fuck you. God damn. Wait a minute. Ah, shit. If he's not going to share Firefox, I have to. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill Firefox and reload it. Maybe that'll fix it, because I have the whole freaking news already brought up on those tabs. So let me just move this over here as a joke for Warhammer Wednesday. Let me quit Firefox and let me reload it. Maybe that'll fix it, because it's clearly not it's not an overall thing, because I can still share Chrome. Maybe it just wasn't interacting. So let's bring it back up. Recently closed. Restore previous session. Okay. Now let's bring up the news. I'm sorry. I apologize for this. I like to run a much smoother streaming. All right, now will it work now? Nope, still not working. That's really weird. That's really weird. All right, give me a second as I transfer everything, all the news tabs to Chrome tabs. Give me 1 second. It's going to take a moment. This is retarded. The only thing I would other do is like leave. I can't kill the stream. I can't do that. Oh man. Let me say. Oh man, this be. Shit. This is gonna be nasty now. Because normally I have my JavaScript blocker running, and I don't have that on Chrome. I only have the regular ad blocker running on Chrome. Ugh. Everything's being dumbly annoying. All right, there we go. Now, fuck off. Fuck off. Fucking ads. Isn't this a great show, guys? Aren't I just great? It's all live and it's awesome. Okay, let's get to the news. Let's get to the news. Ooh, that felt like a long journey to get there. I'm tired. Are you? Okay, so UTA expands communications team with addition of Gabe. I don't know who these people are. I don't care. Kelly O'Sullivan and Lois Smith's co-starring in indie comedy The Steel Harp. Sure. Power of Young Hollywood host Alec Flynn talks comedy and his hopes for show business future. I don't know who you are, therefore I don't care. Neon acquires North American rights to Japanese thriller Exit 8. Sure. And I'm not excited about any of these things. Just not. Tulsa King Season 3. Okay, I am excited about that. Tulsa King Season 3 teaser. Dwight muscles his way into distillery business with painful results. Oh, now we know at the end of last season, Dwight had been black bagged by the government, and they're probably going to force him into this stuff. So I'm looking forward to this Tulsa King Season 3. We are a few weeks away from the premiere, but I won't get to watch it until it's done. So I probably won't get to watch it till like October at this point. October, maybe early November, because I like to watch it in a go. It's not something I'm reviewing. I can choose to be a regular viewer and watch it at my own speed, which means I want to watch it all at once over a 2 to 3 day period without any real breaks. But Tulsa King Season 3, looking forward to that. Young Hollywood Impact Report 2025. Millie Alcock, Simone Biles, Somber Miles Catton, and more talent writing next to showbiz. I only know one of those names, and I only know Millie Alcock because she was in House of the Dragon, and she's now going to be Supergirl, and that she's got an army of fucking simps that won't let you be objectively critical of her. So I'm so looking forward to covering Supergirl and the pushback I'm likely to get, because simps are idiots. Platonic stars Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne break down Will and Jenna's relationship in season 2 bathroom scene. Anything Seth Rogen is bad. Anything Seth Rogen is bad. Plain and simple. I hate that, man. Yellowstone spinoff, Marshall's cast Logan Marshall Green. I don't care. I checked out of Yellowstone after season 2. Dan Boutner joins Lemonada Media. I don't care. Aubrey Plaza to star as Heidi Fleiss in upcoming biopic for Pinky Promise. They already did a Heidi Fleiss biopic on USA from the chick who played the daughter in Sopranos like 20 years ago. They did a Heidi Fleiss TV movie once already. But I guess Aubrey Plaza is hot to do it now. I don't know. Who cares about Heidi Fleiss anymore? Wow. That's a long-ass time ago. Madam to the Stars. She was. A Sense of Home marks New York expansion with fundraiser at Sean and Serena Levy's, Hampton South. I don't know, whatever. Tyler Takes Charge. I don't care about your music crap. Bill Hader was never funny. Bill Hader's never funny. I don't care what he did after SNL. Tobias Menzies and Sophia DiMartino among 8 joining Aya Alabeka rom-com. Well, it's at Apple. They'll spend a lot of money on it. It may actually be decent, and nobody will watch it. Man, this news sucks. This isn't good news at all. TIFF documentary, don't care. Box office figure Friday, weapons battle for first place over Fantastic Four. Won't it be funny when Freakier Friday or that Weapons movie topple Fantastic Four. Flop. Young kids grapple with anti-Semitism in new book from journalist Bianca Golder. Well, hey, listen. In all seriousness, anti-Semitism is real these days. A lot of people doing that shit. Hasn't gone away. It's a real thing. Trust me. Paramount's Skydance's streaming chief Cindy Holland hires ex-Netflix execs Jane Wiseman, Efren Mirren for key roles. Once again, the firing of old Paramount and the hiring of new people to try and make it work. I don't even know what that is. Don't care. Disney boss Bob Iger says creating new IP is of great value, but there's no priority among sequels, remakes, and originals. Just great movies. That's just fucking word salad spin out of bobblehead. That's word salad spin. Jeez. MJ the Musical star Jamal Fields Green on the huge responsibility of playing Michael Jackson on stage. I have no choice but continuously perfect the craft. Good luck with that, man. You're either going to make a lot of people happy or piss a lot of people off. Cold Storage trailer. Movie with Liam Neeson. I think it's a comedy. I don't know. I don't understand. If I had legs, I'd kick you trailer. Rose Byrne plays spiraling mother in A24 dramedy. Again, these are things that might interest other people, but they don't interest me. Disney Store unveils Halloween Villains Collection featuring Maleficent, Ursula, Hades, Scar, and more. Yeah. No. Metallica to perform a special concert at Hamptons to launch Sirius XM Maximum Metallica channel. Listen, Metallica never turned down a chance to make money, but back in the day, they would sue you if you pirated their music. Yeah, here's the Hulu Disney story. Already talked about that. I don't care about that. The Traders producer, Arthur Mead reports $132 million revenue drop. Huh. Well, maybe make something good and maybe I'll hear of you and I'll care. Dave Franco open to playing Luigi Mangione in biopic. Oh, wow. Talk about tone fucking deaf. Yes, let's make the movie about a murderer. A murderer that a bunch of commie Marxists celebrated. Fucking crazy. Fucking crazy, dude. Disney will stop reporting subscriber numbers for Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN. Whoa! Holy shit. All right, that's an addition to what we just talked about right there. So they're going to absorb Hulu, and now they're not going to talk about the numbers either. Wow. Okay, hang on. I'm bookmarking this. We're going to have a conversation about this weekend. What? No. Shit. No. God damn it. What did that? Wrong fucking thing. All right, hang on. Where did it go? You guys are looking at it right now. Hold on. That was wrong. I would. God damn it. Come on. What the fuck? Seriously, Chrome, you suck. Oh my god. Fucking Chrome. All right. New window. Bookmark it later. Jesus fucking H Christ. God damn. Fucking Chrome. As Emma Thompson's Dead of Winter debuts, producers August Schleen discuss star-led slate, including films with Anne Hathaway, Russell Crowe, and Ethan Hawke. Hey, shill away. Try and get people to watch your movies, famous people, but I don't really care. Disney streaming swings to profit in June quarter as U.S. parks-based lift overall results. I wonder what magic number shifting they did to achieve that. I really do. Because we know they don't make money. Listen, Disney Plus doesn't make money. There's some serious, I call chicanery and shenanigans. I do. There it is. $30 for the new ESPN streaming service. That's a lot. I don't know if people are going to pay that. Here it is right here. We already talked about that. Let's go one more in. Wednesday season 2 cast guide. All the characters. Oh, stop! Fuck you! So I fucking hate using Chrome for this shit. It works nice on Firefox. I don't know what the fuck is up with StreamYards today. I don't care about Wednesday season 2. I'm out. I'm out with season 2. Also, it's gonna be really weird because Jenna Ortega looks normal in it, and how she looks now with the jaw thing. What are you gonna do going forward to that, huh? I don't know. I don't know. All right, that's enough of this. Let's move on. Stop! Fucking Chrome! No! Go. Fuck it. We're skipping Hollywood Reporter today. Fuck it. Skipping it. Dead by Daylight fans were so desperate for bug fixes they started asking Overwatch team for help. Okay. I don't play any of those games. Katsuhiro Harada says casual fighting game fans would struggle to master new Tekken Tag Tournament, better off a separate mode within standard Tekken game. Let's just say that their statement is basically saying, we understand you all suck at games now. So we understand you all suck at games, so we're not even going to try to make you play the game at a good difficulty level. Good job. Give me a break. Don't, make a game hard. The cream will rise to the top. Tekken 8 developers discuss why Miari Zo Tekken Tag Tournament and Season 2 Evo. Listen. I'm surprised there's Tekken 8 to begin with. I thought Tekken was a dead franchise. I really did. Guitar Hero veterans announced plans for new rhythm game revival. Oh, God. I hate the idea of rhythm games. I just do. For the simple fact that as someone who once tried to learn guitar way back in my youth, I was okay. I didn't put the time in. If I'd put the time in, I probably could have been really better, but I didn't really want to do it. I thought I did, but in the end, I didn't. And I just like the idea of playing an instrument more than actually learning to play it. But for the amount of time people spent on the rhythm games with the controller, all the controls like that, you could have learned to play a real guitar or a real instrument. You could have, with the amount of time you put into it. That's why I find it so crazy that people will spend thousands and thousands of hours playing those games, but they don't want to learn the real thing. Exclusive. Ursula, voice stealer, and the enchanted version of Cruella, style icon from Disney Lorcana's Fabled set revealed. That was words that don't make any sense to me. Sorry, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Star Wars is a new master of the Jedi mind trick. Is this the Matt Smith announcement? Hold on. Let's see. Is this the Matt Smith announcement? No. It's just fake Disney Star Wars bullshit. All right. That is a thing, though. Oh, God damn it. Stop. I don't know if it'll be in here, but it was announced. There it is. Matt Smith will be one of the villains along with Mia Goth in Star Wars Starfighter with Ryan Gosling. I love Matt Smith. Jed loves Matt Smith. But this ain't putting my butt in a seat to watch Disney Star Wars. I will go out on a limb and say he'll probably be the best thing in the movie because Matt Smith, whatever movie, whatever project he's in, he commits to it and he delivers a good performance. But this ain't going to save your film. And I've heard a bunch of fake Doctor Who fans going, oh my God, he's going to be in this. It's going to make Doctor Who memes. Like, what? Shut up. No. This ain't doing anything for that. So this is news, but it's news that doesn't move the needle. Let's be honest. All right, so let's go back up here to where we were. All right, so this is just more Disney Star Wars bullshit right here. Peregrino, a brutal isometric survival game announced for PC. Battlefield 6 is looking to be a massive launch. Good for them. It really sounds like Nintendo once suggested Pikachu should have large breasts. Oh, wow. Somewhere out there, certain furries are just, they are crying out in sorrow that they never got Pikachu with tits. Oh, I need a minute for that one. Wow. Oh my God. That borderline breaks me right there. Pikachu with tits. Really? Really? What degenerate, demented motherfucker thought putting tits on Pikachu would be a good idea? Wow. Just wow. I am floored by that. Pikachu with tits. Jeez. I want to be done for the day after hearing that. That hurts my brain. Video game performers overlooked for live action adaptation, says Baldur's Gate 3 performance director. No. Somebody does a voice doesn't mean they should be live action version of this, okay? No, that's not that's no. It doesn't mean you fit the build of the character you voice. Mr. Beast considering real life hugger games without real guns. Can he just go away? I hate this guy. I literally don't know anybody in the world that watches Mr. Beast in my life. Yet somehow everybody watches him. I don't get it. This is a man with no soul behind his eyes. That is the fakest smile in the world that he has somehow managed to make millions on. I wish he'd just go away. I really do. Amazon's War of the Worlds remake is so bad, critics are wondering how it was even released in the first place. I haven't watched it. I'm not planning on watching it. I don't care. Mafia: The Old Country PS5 Pro Enhanced from launch. I never played the Mafia game, so I can't really speak to that. Hamilton is finally getting a theatrical release 10 years on. Fuck Hamilton. Fuck Hamilton and it's fucking DEI history bullshit. Fuck it. And fuck that dude. I suddenly forget his name. He's an asshole. He's a complete and total asshole. And has ruined so many things. Manuel, whatever. Fuck him. He's an asshole. I had to recast the entire movie. Weapons director reveals how Pedro Pascal dropping out threw us into turmoil. I find that so hard to believe. Genshin Impact discontinues PS4 support due to limitations related to hardware performance and performance application size. So, wow, that sucks for people who are still playing Genshin Impact on PS4. But I guess as games continue to grow and they add stuff to it, the PS4 hardware cannot handle it. Sucks for them. And that's not me being sarcastic. That sucks for them, dude. Genshin Impact, people like the game. I never got into it because I don't like that kind of player selection thing. Bunch of femboys and chicks and this and that and running around. I want to make a custom character in MMO. I don't want to be a character that's not mine. So Chris Hemsworth explains that odd video that looked like a farewell message from Thor, says it definitely got misconstrued. Okay, never heard of it. South Park trolls Trump after U.S. Homeland Security uses trailer image pronouns. That's a little bit of a miss. That's not an accurate representation of what's going on here. They want to try and this is IGN trying to turn it on Trump. The Trump administration actually leaned into a joke, and South Park is now butthurt over it. So, come on, guys. I've seen this talked about today. I've seen the posts. People talk about this. It's a bad look for South Park. They're not looking good on this. They're okay dishing it out, but they can't seem to take it when somebody leans into their joke. And they want people to be butthurt. They don't like it when they go, okay, fine, we're gonna roll with it. So bad look for Parker and Stone. Not smart, guys. Not smart. Which means likely the next episode they make is going to be, it's not going to be clever. It's them going to be trying hard to regain the narrative and the advantage in this back and forth with Trump. Spider-Man brand new day set teases practical web shooting. We talked about that yesterday. So there we go on that. Park Place. My voice just really cracked. I don't know where that came from. Disney theme parks and experiences revenue hits record $9 billion in quarter 3 2025, but questions linger on attendance and pricing. Again, I wonder what magic they did for that. I wonder what they did. Disney admits that Marvel's Thunderbolts and Pixar Elio were flops in latest earnings report. Of course they were. They lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Bob Iger claims Fantastic Four is a new IP despite being its third reboot. Yeah, we sort of mentioned that before. Word salad. Review: Ice Cube's War of the Worlds is an affront to H.G. Wells, an adaptation without comprehension. Yeah. Disney ending standalone Hulu app. We talked about that. We talked about the ESPN and WWE and current earnings call. And there you go. And Howard Stern got fired today. I laughed when I heard that. Fuck him. And that's kind of it. So there are the articles. Hail Smoo. What's up, Smoo? All right, so there we go. All right, so now let's see. We got anything else over here? No. Okay, so we're ready for Warhammer Wednesday. Before that, though, I found this, and I found this amusing. I found a little Warhammer meme. I think it's appropriate for today because, as always, there is a phrase that is synonymous with being a part of the human empire. Do you have protection? The Emperor protects. I liked it. It made me laugh. I liked it. It made me laugh. The Emperor protects. You gotta put the Emperor on your nightstand, and he'll take care of everything. He'll use his psyker powers to make sure you do not inseminate her to protect you from diseases. The Emperor protects. That was funny. Little Warhammer Wednesday joke. If I find these along the way, I will continue to save them for today. But we will be now talking Warhammer Wednesdays. So let me get this set up just in case I want to bring it up. All right, so there we go. All right, so Warhammer Wednesdays. Let's go. Kel for $20. Giving us in my everything's out of order here. Hang on. I just moved everything out of order. Hang on. Had a boomer moment there. Here we go. Boom. Kel for $20. Was the Emperor right? Gonna load? There we go. It's gonna load. I'm having a great day here. Everything's working so smoothly. Wow. I'm lagging there for a second. Whoa, what was that? Bejesus. Okay, so once more, Arbiter Ian, was the Emperor right? And were his plans justified? I'm excited for this one. This is one that I've been hoping we would get to look at because it keeps popping up on my homepage for YouTube. And I can't watch them because then I'm ruining our thing here if I jump ahead. So let's go. Here we go. Was the Emperor right? Albert Ian. Thank you, Kel, for the $20.
The Emperor of Mankind has shaped the galaxy of Warhammer 40k more than any other individual. The Imperium of Man, the dominant force in the galaxy, was a product of his Great Crusade and his Primarch project and his wider millennia-long program to unify humanity. And without it, humanity would have been doomed to destruction. Right? I mean, that's what the Emperor says, but is that actually true?
And that's a great question. Now, on face value, you think, okay, without the Emperor to unite mankind and do what he did, you kind of feel like the Xenos would have run. Maybe we're not so much worried about chaos. Not so much worried about chaos, because going out there is what put people in touch with chaos. But the Xenos might have just destroyed humanity very easily. An orc wog might have just washed across Terra. The Tau, the Eldar, the resurrected Necrons. Although, yeah, the Necrons were on a timer. So yeah, we already learned the Necrons were on a timer. They were going to wake up no matter what. Necrons. So the Tyranids. So Xenos are out there. And without the Emperor to create what he did, would humanity have survived any one of a Xenos invasion sweeping across Terra and wiping everything out? No. I don't know. I would think not, but maybe Arbiter Ian will tell us otherwise. Let's go.
Did you know Tale of Four Gamers is now over on Arbiter Ian's Precinct House? There's a link in the thing below. So, the plans of the Emperor of Mankind are broadly familiar to most 40k fans. During the Age of Strife, when humanity was isolated and at risk of being destroyed by Xenos empires, the Emperor arose on Terra and led a galactic unification project, the Great Crusade, which, by diplomacy or by force, brought together the scattered human empires, pooled their military and technological resources, and destroyed the evil Xenos, leaving humanity, even in the wake of the Horus heresy that followed, as the dominant force in the galaxy. And according to the Emperor, this was all necessary. Without him and his plans, humanity would have been picked apart by emerging Xenos empires, or lost to the worship of the dark powers of chaos, playthings for the demons of the warp. Yes, the Great Crusade involved the conquest, subjugation, and genocide of thousands of...
Genocide. Oh boy, genocide. That's hey, it's truth. It's truth. A lot of people died.
Worlds, and we know that in the end, the Emperor's plans were only semi-successful, leading to the horrific and repressive Imperium of 40k, but it had to be done. It was the best chance available to humanity at the time. At least that's what the Emperor, beloved by all, said. So, is that true? Was the Emperor right? Was the Imperium and its brutal and swift conquest of the galaxy the only way? This is a subject debated a lot online. Not only the morality of doing it, but also the question of, well, was what he said correct? The Great Crusade certainly involved lots of death and destruction, and the Emperor was no democratically elected leader.
No. He kind of just said, yeah, my way or the highway. I'm the most powerful psyker ever. I have so much power. We're going to do this. I'm going to create my gene plan. I'm going to create perfect humans, perfect this and that. And always, we've said in previous videos, he's running out of time. He doesn't have a lot of time. So maybe we'll be enlightened a little bit here.
He was an authoritarian tyrant who insisted every human in the galaxy follow his plans or be killed. The internet is full of fan theories that the Emperor was secretly out for his own gain, or that humanity would have done just fine without the Imperium, or that even if it was the only way, the Emperor was still morally wrong to do the things he did. He was a liar, a hypocrite, a ruthless superweapon who wanted to be God.
I don't know about the last part, but we do know that he is a liar and a hypocrite with some of his behaviors. We've seen in previous videos with certain Primarchs and decisions and this and that. So we do know he's a liar. We do know he's a hypocrite. And we do know he also is a bad dad. He's a bad dad.
There's always lots of discussion on that topic. What do the books actually say? Was the Imperium, the one that the Emperor planned for in the 30th millennium, actually the only solution? And to answer that, we first have to go through a brief history of the new man himself.
Good.
And the development of those plans. So I'll launch into this with a little bit of a disclaimer. The history of the Emperor and the formation of his grand plan is a little bit disjointed, and we do not have the whole story.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
We're told it in fragments spread across more than 100 books. So we need to do a little bit of work to piece it all together. There's no perfect timeline of history here, so I've tried to stitch all those fragments together, hopefully without too much speculation creeping in. The Emperor, as far as we know, was born in around 8000 BC in what is now Anatolia, which is pretty close to where the first
8000 BC. My God, he really is ancient.
human civilizations actually were. There are two possible origins listed. In the first, the emperor was a gestalt being. The shaman, the early psychers of humanity, had guided prehistoric humans through the previous millennia, the shaman's spirits, which were very strong because of their psychic power, returning to the warp when they died, and then being reincarnated into a new body soon afterwards, and that way, their accumulated knowledge would build over generations. But the warp had recently become so turbulent, what with all the sentient species existing and, having emotions, that the shaman's souls could no longer reincarnate before they were eaten in the warp by demons. So they all decided that they would die at the same time so they could combine all their spirits into a single new man.
Whoa. Okay. Damn. So he's like an amalgamation of a bunch of different souls. That's wild.
Who would be immortal and powerful enough to resist the warp. And the emperor was that person, born to apparently normal people in a farming village in the ancient Near East. That's the
I was gonna make a Superman joke, but he's born, not crash landing. But this is kind of there. Born to farmers, destined to be a god.
first version of the story. The second, which may or may not contradict it, briefly hinted at by Ol Person Immortis, is that the Emperor was simply the first psyker, the first shaman, with nothing known beyond that. He was a perpetual, an immortal human, something hinted as being the next evolutionary step for humanity. Was there anyone who could go up against him? Ol shrugged. There were some, but he was the first. You mean the first psyker? The first witch, the first wizard, sorcerer, shaman, druid, the first. There were others who were different, but none like him, not in the beginning. What changed? He did. He was weaker than he is now, much weaker, but always stronger than anyone else. People change. People stay the same. He was always driven. Always. Early in his life, his father.
I guess you could kind of combine both of those, both those ideas of his origin, whether he was the first of that. I guess they both find a way to work together, it seems to me.
Was murdered by his uncle. That wasn't the first murder. Humans have been betraying each other for ages, but it was the first he witnessed, and he took revenge, stopping his uncle's heart. In a flashback shown in Master of Mankind, the Emperor says he considers that this is where his philosophy began. Every village already had leaders. Every family had patriarchs and matriarchs. I speak of kings, givers of law, rulers of cultures, not merely those who give orders, but those whose decisions keep a civilization bound together. This was the night I realized that mankind must be ruled. It couldn't be trusted to thrive without a master. It needed to be guided and shaped, bound by laws, and set to follow the course laid by its wisest minds.
It needs my benevolent dictatorship. People are too stupid. I must rule them and force them to do shit.
So the Emperor comes to believe that humanity needs order, needs law, and rulers who impose law in order to develop civilization. And he goes out into the world and starts doing that stuff. Some of this we know about from misremembered legends from ancient times. And we also know that at some point, he does become a powerful ruler. The perpetual Erda says that many perpetuals in the early days were some sort of warlord. In the time of the first cities, he was a warlord even then, a king. And he was doing exactly what most of my kind do. He had taken on the stewardship of the human race. He had a greater understanding of the universe than anyone, such was his power. He saw the dangers of the warp, the fragility of humanity, the recurring flaws of our species, credulity, anger, false faith, yearning, everything that was terrible and also wonderful about humanity. When I met him, he'd already begun on his path to shepherd mankind towards a brighter future. At some point, he meets Ol Person, who is the oldest known perpetual, and with Ol as his war master, he defeats and destroys the Tower of Babel, a great tower raised by sorcerers who had unlocked the entire lexicon of Enuncia, the primordial language of creation. The sorcerers had intended to use that language to raise up humanity, but it turns out that merely knowing Enuncia is dangerous. This will be a theme.
I guess that opened the doors to chaos.
Cities turned to ash and salt, predator ideas, words that once you heard them would sink into the brain and kill you if you started to think the wrong things. The Emperor casts down the tower and kills the sorcerers, but he keeps the knowledge for himself, stating that even then he can see the shadow of the future, that humanity would be threatened way more than just from a single tower, and that it would be ridiculous to cast aside a potential tool that could save it. Tools, said the man, weapons, knowledge. We cannot throw aside any of it.
But I'm the only one who gets to know what it is.
You are right. We cannot see the clear path to salvation, but we will be able to. This is a step. There shall be other steps and other paths, and we shall take them in turn as we must. This, though, is the first real step. Come, we're fighting a war, the end of which no one else shall see. We cannot turn from the weapons that we have, nor those that Providence provides. A glass to see further, a word to open hearts, a sword to kill unborn gods. The man in the crown nodded and gestured to the symbol-covered pillars and walls. Take this knowledge and the fate changes. Leave it and it unravels. It's a simple choice. But there are no simple choices, said Ol. But there are, said the man. It's just the consequences that are complicated. So the myth of the Tower of Babel dates from about 4200 BC. So this is quite early in the emperor's life. And we have codes of laws in real history from about 2000 BC. So evidently the emperor's ideas spread to some degree. In these excerpts, the emperor already seems to have a level of foresight, psychic precognition. But we also know that in 40K, foresight is not very reliable. You can often see the potential results, but not what decisions you have to make to get there. We also know that he was one other ancient ruler, Alexander the Great, who...
Yeah, I've heard this one.
In 323 BC, created the largest empire ever seen at the time, which stretched from Europe all the way to northern India. In a fevered memory, Horus says that the emperor once told him that he was Alexander, who wept when he reached the banks of the Hyphasis, the Beas River, when he found there was no more that he could conquer. Anyway, he came to the river Hyphasis and crossed it and wept, for, as he put it, there were no new worlds to conquer. Beside the Hyphasis, my father wept because at the time he felt he had accomplished all he could. His ambitions were achieved, and the revelation shook him. He was not proud or satisfied. He was bereft. In fact, the original quote from Plutarch says he wept because he realized there were infinite worlds to conquer, which also makes sense because shortly after this, the emperor discovered the ancient Xenos device known as the Golden Throne.
Whoa. I didn't know the Golden Throne was a Xenos device. I didn't know that. I did not know that. That's news to me. I thought he built the Golden Throne. Okay.
Under the sands of Asia, or maybe a device that inspired or became part of the Golden Throne. It's unclear.
Okay.
This also tracks the Golden Throne will eventually be sited under the Himalayas, under his palace, which is exactly where Alexander got to when he had his realization. And then in history, Alexander dies and his empire was immediately broken up by his squabbling generals, which does reinforce the emperor's original argument a bit. The minute he wasn't there to rule, apparently off studying the Golden Throne, the empire fell apart. That's the last we have of the emperor being an actual.
So that's funny. The idea, he's Alexander. He decides to spend however long centuries studying the Golden Throne. He forgets everything else, and all his generals break apart his empire. Man, it's talk about out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind.
The ruler. After this, coinciding with the discovery of the Golden Throne, he seems to move into the background, and we're told he's guiding humanity without directly ruling over it for thousands of years. At some point in the Middle Ages, he briefly emerges as a golden knight who defeats a silvery worm-like construct in modern-day Libya and then imprisons it on Mars. This is implied to be a shard of the ancient Catan, the Void Dragon. And this event...
We heard about this during... previous video.
Gives rise to the myth of St. George and the Dragon, where it's confused with the historical St. George, who likely existed a lot earlier. Perceiving that the dragon was helpless, though not dead, the knight untied a long white banner from his shattered lance and bound it around the neck of the monster. With the dragon subdued, the knight turned to the astounded handmaidens and the people of the city who streamed from its gates in a riot of adulation. The knight raised a hand to quiet them, and such was his presence and radiance that all who beheld him fell silent. "The dragon is defeated," cried the warrior, "but it's beyond even my power to destroy, so I shall drag it in fetters from this place and bind it deep in the darkness, where it will remain until the end of all things." Other than that, he disappears from human history. Humanity grows, takes over the earth, expands into the stars, discovers the warp, and begins the age of technology. According to Erda again, speaking way later, at all points during this, he's trying to hasten humanity along its development. He saw his own power and tried to use it. He tried to steer mankind towards a better future. He tried to raise the human race up to achieve its potential. And of course, because of his power, he was rather more effective than most of us.
Now that goes against what he said before, though. I have to lead them, but he's just influencing them. It's a little bit of a break in his narrative there.
At some point in the age of technology, he travels on a generation ship with another perpetual, Olivia Sureka, with a human expedition to colonize the world of Molech, which happens to contain a mysterious portal into the warp. Nobody knows exactly what he does in there, but he comes out way more powerful. And there are numerous hints that he got more knowledge or stole something or did some deal with the powers of the warp or gained control over it.
Wait, he did a deal with the Chaos Gods? Possibly. That's a little sketchy.
Whenever it's mentioned, there are references to the Greek myth of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. "You have brought the emperor face to face with chaos first found, closer than when he sat upon the throne or walked the shrieking halls of the webway, perhaps closer even than when he last faced the Four.
The Four. The Four.
And took their fire from them on Molech." Again, we don't know exactly what happens here. It's one of the great mysteries of the setting. He gains mastery of the warp, and then that comes up a few different ways later in the story. During the age of technology, a few other things happen. There's mention of rampant genetic engineering as humanity is modified into a load of weirder and weirder things. There's also the vague implication that democracy isn't a thing anymore and hasn't been for a while. From the very few hints we get, they imply that it's all techno-rulers or warlords rather than enlightened republics. Also, humanity has started to evolve psychically, which is very dangerous. Psychers are popping up and they have no idea how to control their powers.
The whispers. Whispers.
And then very finally in this period, there is the development of AI, which leads to a massive cybernetic revolt, which almost wipes out humanity. How much of that the Emperor's involved in, we don't know. Erda again mentions
He's off jerking off on the Golden Throne. That's what he's doing.
that a lot of wars are fought in disguise between the Emperor and other perpetuals trying to stop his plans, but we don't know any more than that. Some of us joined him, others decided not to. Some of us fought him. Several of the greatest conflicts in world history were caused by rival perpetuals trying to thwart his program.
Okay.
This is followed quickly
Okay.
by the Age of Strife, in which the Eldari fall begins. The build up to this clouds the warp, making warp travel impossible. And with no interstellar travel, humanity fractures, and all the problems we just said, especially the genetic engineering and the rogue psyker ones, get way worse. Worlds are swallowed by psychers gone wrong. Warlords turn humans into weird biomechanical monsters. Terror itself devolves into techno-barbarian nation states, making use of horrific weapons and dark sorcery to wage their wars. And across the galaxy, any surviving humanity becomes a load of isolated civilizations that sometimes even forget where they came from. Then, after 5,000 years, the fall of the Eldar actually happens. The Chaos God Slanesh is born. The Eldar Empire is wiped out, leaving the Eye of Terror, a massive rift in reality. And the warp storms are blown away, leaving everyone else in the galaxy free to expand again. But the Emperor, in some of the oldest lore out there, from Slaves to Darkness in the 80s, foresaw the fall of the Eldar and resolved that humanity was approaching a tipping point, in danger of being destroyed in a few different ways. First, when the warp storms come down, there was going to be a galactic free-for-all as various Xenos empires and species expand, and humanity needs to be ready to win that and not get immediately eaten by aliens.
Yes, that's a clear thing. You're broken, you're separated, you're isolated from each other, you're not connected. There's no unified human force. A single orc wog could sweep across everything and wipe shit out very easily. Very easily.
Ideally ending up in a position where it can never again be in danger of Xenos conquest. Or, I guess, in danger of being screwed over by some Xenos race doing the same thing as the Eldar and ripping a hole in reality. Then, now safe from real space domination, humanity needs to be able to evolve psychically in a way that doesn't result in them doing the same as the Eldar. Ideally, safe from as much of the predation of the warp as possible. So, along with a few other perpetuals, Malkador and Erda at the start, he embarks on a great plan, or rather, a series of plans within plans, with contingencies and backups and fail-safes all over the place in the hope that one path will work. Again, it's not clear if this is just part of his ancient program to elevate humanity or a new urgent rush for it, but it's this plan that we're talking about in the video.
All right, so now here it is, the plan that is always running out of time to complete.
The plan has a number of different parts, all of which are reliant on each other. First, he decides to try being a leader again, to unify humanity under his banner, starting with Earth. Ideally, that's done by diplomacy, but it has to happen quickly, before the warp storms come down and leave humanity vulnerable. So conquest is going to be a thing too, and that's going to require armies, and also making sure all the horrific old weapons of the Dark Age of technology are firmly in the Imperium's hands and nobody else's. Then, when the warp storms come down, those armies and their forbidden weapons need to be able to go into the galaxy and do the same thing. Unite all the strands of humanity, leaving none that are outside the control of the Imperium, and pour all their resources and their lost technology together to make sure humanity are left in the dominant military position in the galaxy, safe from alien conquest forevermore. Secondly, while doing that, he kind of needs to stabilize the human genome. Humanity had been mutated in all sorts of horrific...
Here we go, gene seeds.
Unstable ways by unscrupulous rulers over thousands of years. And so the plan was to try and stabilize that and establish a reliable, robust genetic base again. Just like with the horrific Dark Age weapons, the Emperor doesn't mind using genetic engineering to do his conquering. He creates Custodes, Thunder Warriors, and Space Marines, and he even uses that mastery of the warp to create Primarchs to lead them. But those are all implied to be tools, means to an end. It's regular baseline humans who are intended to inherit the Imperium. Again, I'll reiterate that this has to happen quickly, before any other species or empire does it, and the Emperor will use any tool to get there first, even if those tools need to be discarded afterwards. He creates the Thunder Warriors, brutal and savage armies that are required to conquer the horrors of terror, but he then wipes them out because once that was done, they were just a bit too dangerous to have standing around.
Jeez.
He's ruthless about that sort of thing. Okay, third, he needs to stop people worshipping the warp. As far as the Emperor is concerned, all religious worship will eventually lead to worshipping chaos, because that's what works, even if your intentions are good. He tells a custodian the story of the priest king of Molland Sen, who started out trying to help his people, but eventually turned his realm on terror into a horrific chaos cult. Superstition and ignorance always attract the warp's denizens, continued the Emperor. For the core of religion is the twin principle of arrogance and fear. Fear of oblivion, fear of an unfair life and an arbitrary universe, fear of there simply being nothing, no great and grand scheme to existence, the fear, ultimately, of being powerless. In fact, it's not just enough to stop worshipping the warp. Knowledge of the warp needs to be quite heavily guarded, since, a bit like Enuncia, knowing about the warp can corrupt you. And if knowledge of the warp was widely taught, inevitably some humans would try and use it for personal gain. Humans are like that. However, realizing that a belief in something higher is very useful to you.
I will be your god.
Night people, he replaces religious worship by a belief in the manifest destiny of humankind,
Okay.
the glorious project of the Imperium. You can have faith in humanity, in the project. Loken says as much right at the start of Horus Rising. I am a man of faith, he said softly, and that faith is the truth of the Imperium. And despite being in the shadows for millennia, the Emperor emerges and becomes that figurehead, the great, giant, shining golden figure of awe, removed from and set above humanity, but crucially, not a god, just publicized as the greatest human, the most powerful psyker. All person and Malkador and the Emperor all separately state that this is a performance. The man I once knew, he didn't really care for majesty or material riches. It was all just a means to an end. Everything was. The palaces, the titles, even the face he wore, they meant nothing to him. All that mattered was what they meant to other people. They were just aspects, signifying devices to carry authority. He had to look the part. To rule a galaxy, he needed a palace like this. I assure you, he would have as soon lived a monk in some stone cell or in a hut on a barren moor. He needed nothing, but no one would have taken him seriously. This monstrous, tasteless edifice is simply the natural conclusion of his progress.
That makes total sense. Pomp and circumstance, flair. You have to put on a kabuki theater at times. Otherwise, why are we doing this? Why are we following you? Why are you special? You have to look the part. You have to play the part. And it does make sense, given what we've learned up to this point, it does make sense that he would rather be a nerd in a library or just sitting in quiet contemplation, sending out thoughts than parading around. But he needed to be he needed to be his own figurehead is the thing. He needed to be his own figurehead. And he understood that. And as long as he was moving around, like you're saying, he could control the idea of being worshipped as a god. I mean, I said that jokingly before. I know what we're doing here. But now, what do you do? We're going to see what happens when you lose control of your own narrative.
The Emperor doesn't really enjoy it, but it gives humanity a focus, and it also allows him to more easily control those Primarchs he created to lead the armies. We see later that they don't really like being told what to do by regular humans who are way less powerful than them. I defy you, Horus spat at the Sigillite. You and this shadowy council of bureaucrats, your kind's not fit to rule anything. An Imperium ruled by men would be exactly what your father intended, Malkador murmured. All this, the removal of religion, the casting of himself as leader, the marketing of all of this, is called the Imperial Truth. Fourthly, he has to control all the Psykers. Humanity was sprouting more and more Psykers, and they can be really dangerous without proper training, so Psykers needed to be controlled, ideally captured and funneled into useful Imperial institutions.
That's a great picture. Captured, funneled, be useful. They're chained up.
Along with controlling genetic mutation, this becomes another of the big laws of the Imperium that the states it takes over are forced to adhere to. And then lastly, the only part of this that actually requires the direct involvement of the Emperor, stop using warp travel. Navigators have been around since the Dark Age of technology and would still be needed for this conquest, so he creates the Astronomicon on Terra to make them more effective, and he starts training astropaths to help with communication. But the real goal was that humanity should take over the webway from the recently destroyed Eldar, which would make travel and communication a hell of a lot safer. To do this, the Golden Throne had maybe been relocated, but certainly augmented in order to create a path into the webway from a portal under the Himalayas on Terra, under his palace. The bridging bit between that portal and the webway itself would have to be built by humans from psi-reactive machinery, but once that bridge was constructed, humans would be able to spread through the webway, make it safe, and stop using warp travel. Given that this is a massive psychic challenge, it seems to be the bit that the Emperor is most likely to need to do himself. Remember, he's created 20 loyal magic super generals to do the real space conquering.
I like that
Lastly,
term. 20 loyal magic super generals, who half of them are turn out to be insane megalomaniacs.
And I've said it already, but all of this had to happen quickly. It seems that the plan was for it to take no more than a few hundred years, and there are a number of possible reasons suggested for this. First, other alien species, or maybe some other warp-tainted humans, might try and do the same thing when the storms come down and build their empire first. Secondly, the warp and the powers of chaos would be reeling in the wake of the birth of Slanesh, and the Emperor wanted to get as much
That's Anish, that's Nurgle, that's Korn, or at least depictions of them.
as possible done before they realized what he was doing. There is still this idea that the Emperor, when he was on Molech, played some trick or did some deal with chaos and is now going back on it, and he wanted to get all this stuff done before they realize. And lastly, whatever he did back then, it seems like it's causing the Emperor to lose his humanity. We don't really know what this means, but the implication is that his mastery of the warp allows him to draw almost limitless power from it, but the more he does that, the more he sort of unravels or becomes inhuman. So by setting all this in motion, possibly creating the Primarchs, possibly the bridging of the webway, by grabbing the power needed to do all that, he also puts himself on some sort of clock. He's taken to referring to them as his sons. Can you imagine that? Neither could I until I heard it from his own lips. There might even be some lingering attachment there, though how long that will last, I cannot say. Valdor hesitated. Then his human sentiments, they're still ebbing? As he predicted, all things have their price. All of this is still a long shot. The Emperor and Malkador are not omnipotent. Prophecy in 40k is not a very reliable art. So in attempting this, they are above all pragmatic. They put in motion a million contingency plans, set up loads of stuff they think might be useful.
The Terminus Codex. Terminus Codex. We'll talk about that at the end here.
And of course, they capitulate sometimes. They're happy to make exceptions to some of their big publicized laws if it pushes the plan forward overall. For example, they allowed the Mechanicum.
I swear to God, that looks like fucking Unicron to me every damn time. I know it's Mars, but it looks like Unicron to me every time.
To keep their religion, because it doesn't seem very worrying as far as religions go, and because Mars was more useful as an ally, the early Imperium couldn't really afford the delay that a war with Mars would cause. They're also aware of the scale of the endeavor and the immoral things they're going to have to do to make it happen. In their opinion, this is still the only way to really guarantee a safe future for humanity. But it's going to involve a lot of war and a lot of death. It is a conquest of the galaxy. They will have plans that happen in secret. They'll likely tell lies to preserve the appearance of the glorious Imperium and keep people united. Like any nation, there will be conspiracies and cover-ups, whatever gets the job done. And those will probably cause friction, and that friction might need to be dealt with. Their contingencies even plan, to a degree, for the idea that some of the Primarchs might rebel, and how they might deal with that. For the Emperor and Malkador, all of that is justified by the fact that it's necessary. The survival of humanity rests on this plan. The
means justify the ends, to put it simply.
There are occasional mentions of what the intended future will be like after all this is achieved, and speculation about what it might entail. Will the Emperor stay in power or disappear? There are hints he might not be around forever. Will the Space Marines and the Primarchs still be needed at all? Rob Ute Gilliman thinks that the Primarchs and Space Marines will serve a governing role in the future. Magnus's destiny is to sit on the Golden Throne, but it's also clear that the move is generally towards civilian human government. Unspoken understanding flowed between Magnus and the Emperor. Everything Magnus had done was laid bare, and everything the Emperor planned flowed into him. He saw himself atop the Golden Throne, using his fearsome powers to guide humanity to its destiny as rulers of the galaxy. He was to be his father's chosen instrument of ultimate victory. It broke him to know that his unthinking hubris had shattered that dream. The Emperor never reveals what the full plan is once humanity's survival is achieved and they're safe to mature into a psychic species. We only know that the Emperor wants to ensure that it happens. What we do know is that the Imperium that we recognize from 40k isn't it.
No, it's not. Tyranny, oppression, inquisitions, That's what you got.
Because these plans don't all work out. The Imperium of 40k is not what the Emperor set out to create in 30k. So, that's his plan. What actually happened? Well, the Warp Storms come down, the Great Crusade starts, and Malcador and the Emperor begin the gamble. There are, of course, some problems. There's an early rebellion, the Palace Coup, when the first Grand Provost Marshal discovers that the laws the Imperium says it rules by, that it's united humanity under, don't actually apply to the highest powers in the land. But the biggest problem is when both the Perpetual Erda and the geneticist, Amar Astarte, horrified at the scale of these plans and the death it involves, try to sabotage the Space Marine project. Apparently, they thought the Emperor was taking too many risks, which I think is probably true. The question is, are they justified? He was taking risks. One by one, Perpetuals allied to him slipped away. He was glad to see the back of them, I think. He was tired of their objections and weary of their caution. He wanted results. He became angry with minds that could not match his speed of thought and his genius. So most of us left him. Amar Astarte eventually tries to sabotage the Space Marine project, which causes massive setbacks in early Space Marine production, and Erda causes the Primarchs to be scattered through the warp to...
See, there's a question I had asked about a month or so ago. Why were the Primarchs lost? And now here's the answer.
Various planets across the galaxy. So the Great Crusade has to start without its main generals. And I think this is probably the single biggest problem that screws up the Emperor's gambit.
Yeah, well, let's take a minute here. We've been introduced to a number of Primarchs, either through other videos, some very with shallow talk, and others with a great deal of detail. The scattering of the Primarchs, the sending them out there, by having them out there and having lives before they were supposed to be who they were, we've seen the results. In some cases, it caused massive problems in terms of them being proper leaders that maybe the Emperor intended them to be. So now you have to get them back in the fold. And then, of course, the ultimate problem, Horus was made pliable to chaos.
Primarchs are not just useful as generals to go and do the unifying while the Emperor does the webway bit, but also because they stabilize the Space Marine Legion's gene seed. If they had stayed on Terra, not only would there be 20 Imperium-raised superhuman generals from the very, very start, but also the initial Astartes legions could have been a lot bigger. Them being scattered is a massive delay to a project that we already know has a time limit. The early Crusade then has to be led by the Emperor in person. We don't know if that was the plan.
Yeah, because, all right, if the plan is to remain on the Golden Throne and start stabilizing the webway for human use, that means he's not on the Golden Throne and he's instead leading the armies to conquer. That is a delay. That's a problem. That's why in a lot of stories and settings, your leader, your ultimate leader, if they are a powerful warrior, they don't take the field unless it's absolutely necessary. They have their generals to take the field.
Who is also trying to find his Primarchs so that he can get the plans back on track. And those Primarchs have now been raised in all sorts of human societies, some of them horrific and damaging, many of them not really tallying with the Emperor's beliefs. Those who are found first get a lot of training and one-on-one time with the Emperor to acclimatize to the Imperium. But as the crusade goes on and
one-on-one time with Dad, they become the favorites.
Out, there's less and less time available for that. The scattering of the Primarchs is a massive problem. However, despite that, the Crusade mostly does achieve the goals he sets out. Human societies are united, mostly willingly or through diplomacy, sometimes through force, which is obviously disproportionately featured in our books about wars. Aliens are killed. In fact, the Imperium faces at least 2 giant expansionist alien empires that seem to have the same idea, and it just about wins against them. And after 200 years, the plan has broadly worked. And at that point, due to a build-up of all the above pressures, the Horus heresy happens. It's worth saying that the majority of Primarchs who turn against the Emperor were those later found ones, shoved in charge of their legions in a rush as the crusade neared completion. Anyway, the Horus Heresy happens, a rebellion by the Primarchs that was on a scale way bigger and more destructive than Malkador or the Emperor seemed to have ever envisaged. During this, Horus also goes to Moloch and gets some of that warp power up. We don't know if it's the same one. Magnus accidentally destroys the Webway project by doing nothing wrong, so the Emperor is then confined to the throne for the rest of the war, holding the warp breach shut, and after a decade-long war that sets the galaxy on fire, eventually, Horus and the Emperor fight. In order to beat Super Horus, the Emperor
I like that. In order to beat Super Horus.
initially attempts to draw a ton of power from the warp, more than he ever has tried to do before, but this actually turns out to be a trick. It seems that if he does this, he'll become so powerful and so inhuman that he'll turn into an entity called the Dark King and destroy everything. So, Ol Person persuades him to let go of that power. Instead, he takes whatever core of humanity still remains within him and he hides it in the warp. That's the origin of the Star Child plot. And then he goes to fight Horus without his power-ups, in the knowledge that he's likely to lose, even if he kills Horus. He has excised those precious human aspects to further steel himself against the pain of what will come after and the mandatory atrocities he will have to countenance in order to rebuild the Imperium. He has set those frail and cardinal virtues adrift on the tide of the Empyrean so that they will not immobilize him, and in the hope that one day he'll be able to reclaim them and be whole again. I watch that jettisoned fragment as it drifts into the void, just one more spark from this world bonfire. All his hope, his mercy, his grace, his love, cast into the lightless tracts of space and time. And
okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that he cut himself off. So that kind of feeds into that whole theory we talked about a couple of weeks ago that he may be reborn because a part of him is out there. The part of him that was the last part of him that was human.
that's what happens. The Dark King is avoided, Horus dies, and the Emperor is so wounded that he has to be permanently installed on the Golden Throne, unable to influence his Imperium except through vague psychic visions, and where after 10,000 years, he seems to have split back into the thousands of separate voices and personalities he started out as in 8000 BC. Rabute Gilliman, the raging tempest, spoke his name, and it was as the violence a dying sun rains upon its worlds. Gilliman, Gilliman, Gilliman. The name echoed down the wind of eternity, never ceasing, never reaching its intended point. The sensation of many minds reached out to Gilliman, violating his senses as they tried to commune, but then one mind seemed to come from the many, a raw, unbounded power, and gave wordless commands to go out and save what they built together, to destroy what they made, to save his brothers, to kill them. Contradictory impulses, all impossible to disobey, all the same, all different.
Gilliman, go out there with your blueberries and do my work.
Right. So, as far as we can tell from the books, that's what we know happened, and that's what the Emperor's plan was. We know that this great plan, the gamble made by the Emperor Malkador, didn't work out totally as intended, but was it wrong? If you go trawling the internet, you'll come across a load of opinions and theories about all this, most of which can't actually be proven with actual law. One of the main issues is that a lot of the above is told to us by the Emperor, and we know that the Emperor has no problem lying or misleading people if it gets the job done. Also, some of the stuff that isn't told to us by the Emperor is told to us by people who have their own grievances and opinions. Erda is hardly a neutral source. So, is any of that true? At the time of the Unification Wars, many other rulers on Terra think that the whole guiding humanity for millennia story is made up, and the Emperor is just a bioweapon created in the Age of Strife. But we have All Person, who knew him back in ancient times. We have a couple of myths of ancient times, a couple of things where it seems other people said he was definitely there. So we know that that theory isn't true. But was the Emperor just a tyrant who wanted to be in charge all along, who spun all these tales for personal gain so that he could become a god? That's something you often see on the internet. But if that's the case, it seems like he had a lot of time to do that between being Alexander the Great and the Age of Strife. In Horus Rising, a demon of chaos tells Horus that the Emperor's intention was to destroy religion in order that he could become the only god. But that demon at the time is very obviously lying to Horus about the way things will turn out if Horus rebels against the Emperor. And we do see the Emperor turn down the chance to become the Dark King later on, so that seems unlikely too. Generally, by what we know in the lore, it certainly seems that the Emperor and Malkador believe their plan, that this is the only or the best chance humanity has. And when we see characters in the Horus Heresy who have split from him, Erda, Ol, John Grammaticus, their usual complaint isn't that his plan is wrong, it's the hubris, the arrogance of what he's doing. This plan is just so big and requires so much conquest that it's distasteful. Or, more subtly, that the Emperor is hubristic because he thinks he knows the one true path, when in fact, nobody knows what will happen in the future, and so they eventually get sick of that and leave. But I think nothing in the lore actually suggests the Emperor is actively lying. The only people who say that are chaos demons trying to tempt Primarchs to their side. From what we see, the Emperor and Malkador, rightly or wrongly, are sincere. They believe their plan is true. Whether it is a different question. So,
Yeah, that's the good question. Road to hell is paved with good intentions.
based on what we know happens, is that a reasonable belief? Let's start with the very simplest part of this, the argument that without a military machine the size of the Imperium, ruthlessly uniting humanity at gunpoint, humanity would be destroyed by aliens. All right, what do we know? Well, the Imperium embarks on the Great Crusade in a number of expeditionary fleets led by the 20 legions, and they come into contact with various human enclaves that have survived the Age of Strife. We know that a lot of them join the Imperium pretty quickly, without conflict, either happy to be reunited or maybe fearful of the strength of the Imperium's armies, and those are obviously underrepresented a bit in the books. And then there are loads that either refuse to join or just attack the Imperium, or are mutated in some way and thus are destroyed by the Imperium. No human empire we encounter in the books wins. Most are defeated by less than one legion. A few are defeated without any legions at all, and some take detachments from a few legions working together to overcome, but no human empire we see in the books is anywhere near as militarily strong as the Imperium. We can't say the same for the aliens, though. While the majority of alien species we see are overcome just as easily as the other humans, there are two major aggressive, expansionist alien species that are a genuine threat to the Imperium: the Orcs and the Rangda. The Orcs
are... Yes! My boys!
Simple one. Pretty much as soon as the warp storms come down, the Orcs seem to be everywhere. They're the species the Imperium encounters most often across the galaxy, and it's not until the climactic fall of War-Urg at Olenor, almost 200 years into the Crusade, that the Emperor finally thinks the Great Crusade is on the home stretch, and it's safe for him to go back to his lab and work on the Webway project. The Orcs are described in every way as being a major problem.
Yes.
The Rangda are a little bit more interesting. The Rangdan Empire was a Xenos empire in the Galactic Northeast that were a major threat to the Imperium in its first
I've
century.
never actually heard of the Rangdan. I guess they got wiped out and they're not an army.
Very much about them, other than that they used horrific technology to enslave the populations of worlds they conquered, and that they were aggressive and expansionist. The Imperium fought 3 wars against them, known as the Rangdan Xenocides, and they almost lost. Whole legions were lost fighting the Rangda, and we know that the strongest legions of the early Crusade were reduced massively, almost under strength after it. Different legions became the primary ones after the Rangdan Xenocides. Interestingly, the Rangda are also described in similar ways to Enuncia or the Warp, as maybe just knowing about them's dangerous. The Space Wolves end up purging human worlds of the taint of the Rangda for decades afterwards. There is a fan theory I've seen around a bit that the Rangda were in fact a rival human empire.
The thing about Orc lore is all you really have is what we learned a couple weeks ago, when they were created by the Slan by the Lizardmen to fight. But essentially, Orc lore is based around a warlord. What warlord rises to make a wog to go on a rampage? That's kind of it. You know about a particular wog, and then that's it. There's no Orc society. You have different clans, different tribes that are out there. And when one Orc gets bigger, mutates, nastier, becomes strongest one, and manages to knock enough heads together and get a following, and then takes over another clan, and a Wog builds, that's when you get orc lore, when a Wog happens. Other than that, there is no orc society. It's just they're fighting each other until somebody big enough makes them all fight together and rampage across the galaxy. That's it. Yeah, that would be fun. I love the orcs. I love orcs so much. They are my favorite. I'm a greenskin player. If I played 40K, I would play orc because I love greenskins. Greenskins are fun as hell. Animosity. Here's what makes greenskins fun. You are automatically gimped in everything you play because of animosity. Because orcs will inherently start fighting amongst themselves. You have to do animosity checks every damn turn. That's why if you're playing fantasy, you got to have black orcs around, because black orcs don't suffer animosity and control animosity. Anyway, but yeah, I love orcs, but there's not much to them unless it's a Wog. There's a story around every Wog, but that's it. There's not actual home worlds or this and that, at least not that I know of. It's always just, okay, giant clan, giant tribe, consolidate. We're now a Wog. We're going to go on a tear. And we just, and everybody, you got to hope they just run out of steam until the warlord dies and everybody goes home, starts fighting again, and starts the process all over again. I love orcs. I love them.
Empire that was way nicer than the Imperium, and then Primarchs defected to it because it was nicer, and that's actually why it was so dangerous. And the existence of that knowledge is what needed purging.
I just missed what he said there.
Almost lost. Whole legions were lost fighting the Rangda. And we know that the strongest legions of the early Crusade were reduced massively, almost under strength after it. Different legions became the primary ones after the Rangdan Xenocides. Interestingly, the Rangda are also described in similar ways to Enuncia or the Warp, as maybe just knowing about them's dangerous. The Space Wolves end up purging human worlds of the taint of the Rangda for decades afterwards. There is a fan theory I've seen around a bit that the Rangda were in fact a rival human empire that was way nicer than the Imperium, and then Primarchs defected to it because it was nicer, and that's actually why it was so dangerous. And the existence of that knowledge is what needed purging. But
there's
nothing in the lore that actually supports that. It's a fan theory.
No evidence.
The Rangda are not only described as kind of horrific and alien, they're also friends with aliens like the Sloth, who are horrific. So that sort of implies they're not a benevolent empire. Given what we know about all the different human enclaves that existed at the time, the Interrex, the Alambic Quietude, the Earth of 6319, it seems very clear that none of them would be a match for the Rangda or the Orcs of 30K, both of which are very clearly expanding. None of them can stand against the Imperium, and the Imperium barely wins against the Rangda. Maybe another human empire or great alliance might have arisen that could have united humanity, one that isn't as bad as the Imperium. But again, we see no evidence of that actually happening. Most of the human enclaves that the Imperium encounters don't really even know the warp storms have stopped, or they don't have warp capability anyway, or they don't have the resources to do what the Imperium does. I think without the Imperium happening, the Rangda or the Orcs would have won. That process might have taken ages. The Imperium is still discovering lost human colonies in the 41st millennium, but without the Imperium or something equally powerful, it's reasonable to assume you'd eventually end up with an alien-dominated galaxy with the scattered remnants of humanity existing isolated from each other and being slowly picked off over the next few millennia. We don't know what else might have happened. Other things could have happened, but from the position of 30K, I think that is a reasonable assumption. Okay, so we know there were
which pretty much answers the question I posed when we started this.
Definitely some big alien empires that were very much a threat, but was the Emperor right to kill all the aliens? The general policy of the Imperium is that all Xenos must be wiped out to preserve the best chance for humanity. If humans are in charge of the galaxy with no competition, then they're free to concentrate on becoming a psychic species, essentially doing an Eldar without actually doing an Eldar. So is that correct? Okay, that one's a bit harder to answer. The majority of alien species in the galaxy of 40K or 30K seem to be quite innately hostile, and so they do constitute a threat. But then the Imperium definitely wipes out loads of Xenos species that either pose no threat or just want to be left alone, or ones that actually seem quite friendly, like the Kinnabrak, who are part of the Interrex. The Emperor's reasoning here is basically that aliens can't be trusted, at least not long term. And the thing is, we don't know if that's true or not. In both 40k and 30k, most of the Xenos species we hear about have a
See, that's a fascinating thing, because here's the thing here's why the orcs are always just so nasty. Orcs spawn at a massively quick rate. So you could wipe out orc armies, and in a very short time later, they've spawned more because they're spores. Orcs spawn from spores, at least in fantasy. I'm assuming it's sort of the same in 40k. They very quick spawning rate. They rebuild their numbers very quickly, and the nids are, you know, spawned as well. They gestate and they emerge from their whatever they emerge from, their eggs and shit like that. So they're essentially insectoid motherfuckers, which can be birthed very quickly. So that's that's kind of that's a fear, because you can't keep up. No matter how many Space Marines you can churn out in this time, you cannot keep up with orc spawning and Tyranids spawning. So that would be a dark thing. I would say the Necrons didn't win either. And in the end, the Necrons get overwhelmed despite their powerful nature.
very good reason to be hostile to humans, because the humans want to kill them. But also, the few examples we do have of aliens working with each other also seems to be very unreliable. The Cabal of 30k fracture apart, and in 40k, the Tau are the closest example we have, and their empire has a definite, like, brainwashy second-class citizen vibe going on. In world, the only people who have a perspective long enough to make a judgment on this, people who were around before the Age of Strife and witnessed
Necrons.
Humanity's long history with aliens, are some of the Perpetuals, like Erda and Ol. They might have an opinion, but they never mention it. Or the Emperor, whose opinion is that trusting aliens is a bad idea. We don't have another opinion to counter that with. But those questions come down to another choice the Emperor makes. Can the Imperium just not be nicer? Instead of a conquering warlord, could the Emperor not have stayed in the shadows and manipulated things from behind the scenes, just like he had for thousands of years? You know, create a sort of benevolent space UN. When encountering non-hostile aliens, just ignore them. Attack only when provoked. Engage in diplomacy with humans who don't want to join, and then, if they really don't want to join, leave them be. Can't the Imperium seek to unite humanity, well, more nicely? All right, back to practicalities here. It seems from descriptions that the Unification Wars, that Strife-era terror, with its horrific warlords, evil sorcerers, and gene-twisted ethnarchs, might not have been so receptive to a sort of democratic UN trying to unite it. The place frequently sounds like it belongs in Mad Max or Conan the Barbarian, and from all accounts, being the sort of warlord who could mass produce things like Thunder Warriors and lead giant fist-fighting armies as a figurehead was kind of the standard way of doing things in the Age of Strife. Alliances with those warlords seems a bit unlikely, at least in the time frame the Emperor is working with. But I guess that doesn't mean that united terror couldn't then have become a more diplomatic force once it spread into the galaxy. The question is, would that have provided the level of resources needed? We know that the Imperium that did happen, the Emperor's Imperium, was a completely militaristic society that made its priority the folding in of any and all human-controlled resources, including military power and ancient weapons, as quickly as possible, and then use that to try and wipe out the Xenos. And as I just mentioned, even that was barely enough to win against some Xenos empires. I think it's probably fair to assume that if humanity had controlled less military power, fewer planets, or hadn't amassed its strength as quickly through, long negotiation of membership, or had a structure that allowed individual systems to vote on their involvement in a particular war, or choose not to commit all their forces to the crusade, well, then they would be in more danger of losing, right? And apart from the loss of resources, the other problem with letting human enclaves stay out is that they're dangers in and of themselves. The goal of all this is the psychic evolution of humanity, something that is going to happen anyway, but without some sort of guidance and control, risks humanity just doing an Eldar. Their newfound psychic power getting so out of control, they end up getting eaten by demons and maybe forming another Eye of Terror. The Emperor's view is that even knowledge of the warp is potentially dangerous and corrupting, and so that knowledge has to be carefully controlled, and he very much operates on a need-to-know basis about that. Even the Primarchs are considered not important enough to be informed about it. They have one job, and its real space
Kill.
conquest.
Kill.
Don't ask about the warp. And we know that most of that is true from the rest of 40k. We know the warp's dangerous and that unchecked psychic power is dangerous, and that worshipping chaos and the warp, or having random rogue psychers, is a great way to eventually see your planet and any nearby planets getting eaten by demons. We know that chaos is corrupting and people can be lured into worshipping it stage by stage without realizing what's happening. All those concepts are pretty well established in the setting, so the Emperor is right about them. And obviously, leaving human planets to decide if they want to be part of the Imperium is then a massive risk. Psychic instances are increasing, so that planet is an ever-increasing risk of doing their own Eldar and destroying whatever bits of the Imperium are nearby. Now, we are given a couple of examples in the books that seem on the surface to contradict this. The Interrex are very aware of the warp, so much so that they leave one of the most powerful demon weapons in the setting in a museum, which suggests that, with the proper teaching about the warp, humans can see it more rationally as a dangerous thing that should be avoided. But the Interrex also have whole areas of their planets that seem to be demon-haunted caves where the rebellious locals still engage in their old folk beliefs. So it doesn't bloody work. Prospero was a planet of psychers who seem to be mostly plagued not by the Chaos Gods, but by other warp entities, Psychnoian. But while they have a much more holistic approach to the warp, they were still slowly being wiped out until the arrival of Magnus, who solved all their problems by being tricked into a bargain with Tzeentch. So that wasn't ideal either. And societies like the Word Bearers, home planet of Colchis, actively worship the Chaos Pantheon, but seem to be pretty stable for thousands of years. On the other hand, I don't think any of us would look at Colchis and the Word Bearers and assume there was no way they'd ever fall to chaos. We're given some examples about ways in which people deal with the warp differently, but none of them seem to be a foolproof long-term strategy for the evolution of humanity.
Don't fuck with chaos. Do not mess around with chaos. It's that simple.
Especially as humanity gets more and more psychic. Now, if we're asking the question, was the Emperor correct? Was his plan actually necessary? Then I would say everything in the lore suggests the answer is yes. Given the events we witness in the books, if the Imperium hadn't existed, hadn't conquered Terra, hadn't unified as much military might, recovered as much technology, gathered as many resources as quickly as possible, then one of the other Xenos powers would have won. And that would put humanity in a very precarious position, especially regarding safely evolving it into a psychic species. And in order to achieve that, the Emperor needed to create super soldiers and super generals to lead them, and doing that required stealing power from the warp, which seems to have put the Emperor on an even more strict time limit regarding his ability to remain human. I don't think the lore gives us a way.
See, that was a piece of information that I had been missing. In other previous videos, he had constantly said the Emperor's running out of time, and I didn't know. Now I know, it's because he went and took more power from the warp after maybe stealing it or making a deal with the Chaos Gods. He was put on that time limit. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Now I understand the whole he's running out of time. He's running out of time because it's eating away at him from the inside out of his corporeal form.
Now, we know that the Emperor was always trying to speed up the development of humanity, at least that's what Erda says, but it seems pretty clear that the birth of Slaanesh and the fall of the Eldar and the sudden clearing of the warp storms kind of forced his hand. If he'd waited calmly on Earth for humanity to naturally re-establish itself, if he'd slowed down his plans in any way, there's a pretty good chance humanity would have been eaten by the Rangda or defeated by the Orcs, or that individual systems would do an Eldar and fall apart in psychic overload. And we should point out that even despite the Horus heresy, this plan does mostly work. Humanity does become the dominant force in the galaxy, fighting lots of wars, but not really existentially threatened by alien species for the next 10,000 years. It's only in the 41st millennium, when Tyranids and Necrons show up, and when Abaddon creates the Great Rift, that there are any actual existential threats to humanity. There's already a fair amount of speculation in this for one of my videos, but I think any other explanation involves even more speculation. I think the history of the Horus heresy, all these books, basically confirm that the Emperor and Malkador were right to have a sense of urgency about this, and that humanity really was in danger of being...
That's some really great cover art, by the way. That's some fantastic cover art of these books.
...destroyed if they didn't do their plans. Is that disappointing? Would we prefer it? if the Emperor's plans were just wrong. If he's just an evil tyrant, I mean, that'd certainly make the morality of 40k simpler, right? The Emperor's evil. But I think that actually for 40k to work as well as it does, the Emperor's plans have to be correct. Usually, when people talk about how horrible the Emperor is, they mention the obvious things, right? He is an authoritarian tyrant. He's a dictator. He kills millions of humans and aliens in pursuit of his goals. He's also a liar, and he's often referred to as a hypocrite. He doesn't tell his subordinates, people like the Primarchs, the full truth about his plans. And in Valdor, during the Palace coup, we see that the Lex Imperia, the law of the Imperium, seems not to apply to him or his mates. All of those things are definitely true. The Emperor is horrible. And we can compare that to our own history. Human history has a string of authoritarian dictators who initiated massive wars or murdered millions of people, all in the promise that what they were doing was 100% totally necessary, that once their grand, bloody plans had happened, everyone would be better off afterwards. Many of those dictators even believed what they were doing. They were sincere, at least at first. And millions of people died as a result of those grand plans, which then usually turned out to be wrong. Their plans did not make everything better at the end. The dictator and their immediate family usually ended up being really filthy rich and living a life of questionable luxury, while their people's lives got way worse. And it's tempting to just walk away from 40k with that as the lesson, right? Look what happens when you let an authoritarian dictator win. But of course, the Emperor's right. So we have to look at the other side too. Even when we think war is justified, the leaders and governments who do it still do many of those things, right? About the only war in recent history that most people would agree was justified was the Allied resistance to the Axis powers in World War II. But even the Allied powers restricted people's freedoms, conscripted them into armies, which were then marched into battle in the knowledge that many of them would die. They used propaganda, lied to their own population. They hid details of specific operations from their own side, even high-ranking members of their own side. They restricted information to those who needed to know. They instituted temporary draconian laws that sometimes didn't apply to people sufficiently senior. When we talk about wars, we accept that that stuff is sometimes necessary. It'd be childish to argue that fighting the Nazis was morally wrong because it involved lying to people, and lying is bad. Churchill was a bad dad, so you shouldn't support the war. That seems silly. Warhammer is a war game. Its background is about wars, and the Emperor's story mirrors the fundamental question we ask about wars in the real world. How much immorality is allowed to achieve something you think is moral? It's a trolley problem, right? Would you do an immoral thing if the results were likely to save more people? All right, then, how many would you do? Where's the line? What if it was only slightly likely to save more people? In order to create a narrative where that question exists, to create that gray area where interesting stories happen, you need a realistically achievable moral goal and a load of immoral actions you have to do to get there. And then you can weigh them up and find all your uncomfortable situations, the meat of the story. And the Emperor's plan in 40k is the realistic moral goal. If the Imperium weren't justified at all, if the Emperor was just lying or incorrect, just an evil tyrant who's wrong, I think the setting would be less interesting. On the flip side, if every single thing he did was justified, that'd be boring too. There are people out there whose reaction to trolley problems is just utilitarianism, or who treat fiction like membership of a sports team. I'm a human, so anything is justified if it means the fictional space humans win. That's also boring. That's a Saturday morning cartoon in terms of morals. In order to be interesting, the truth needs to be in this weird grey area in the middle. It's much more easier to see that when you look at the setting of Warhammer 40k. In 40k, the Imperium really does need to fight wars of survival. Millions of conscripted soldiers drafted to fight against swarms of Tyranids, exterminatus to stop demonic possession and warp rifts. We understand that the Imperium's battle for survival is sometimes needed, but we also understand that this has made the Imperium so hidebound and dogmatic that it also fights wars out of basically tradition or martial honor. It wastes millions of lives for no gain at all, or sacrifices planets because of inefficiency, and that one thing feeds the other. It's a world where you can have an honest Imperial character fighting for the survival of their friends, and evil tyrants slaughtering millions out of tradition, and the truth is like somewhere in the middle. Those grey areas are just slightly different when we're talking about the Great Crusade or the Horus Heresy. Do you really need your soldiers to wipe out every single Xenos like a frothing zealot just in case? What if imposing a blanket rule like that, while certainly efficient, means that your soldiers start to enjoy it? What if you need to create an army or a general so horrible and brutal that they can have no place in the empire you're building? Do you kill them afterwards? Is that justified? What happens when you can't actually tell people the real reason they're doing all these things? So they start to speculate and invent their own reasons or their own better ways of doing things. What happens if you can't tell them the truth? What happens when your plan cannot possibly be delayed to fix anything that goes wrong? Was the Emperor's plan correct? Well, according to everything we can see from the lore, broadly, yeah. His plan was a long shot. It didn't completely work out, thanks Horus. But it seems that without
thanks Horus,
the Emperor doing what he did, humanity would be at considerably greater risk of being destroyed or of destroying itself. That is what the lore says. Does that mean it's morally right? Well, that's the same question we ask anytime a war comes up. And the whole point of 40k is that you can't answer it. What's acceptable? How far is too far? These are questions raised constantly in the lore. The theme of many war narratives is to ask, at what cost? At what cost was winning achieved? Was it worth it? That question would be robbed of all its meaning if it turned out the goal was pointless all along. The Emperor's plans being right allows Warhammer to do that, to contrast the apparent requirement, the morality of that goal, with the reality of what had to be done to achieve it. And I think that horror, that tragedy, makes it a more interesting setting to tell all these stories in. Thanks for watching.
Yep, it does make it more interesting. That's why, as I can say this to someone who has played and gone into some of fantasy. That's why it's a lot simpler when you look at fantasy. It's a lot easier to say good and evil. It's not as morally gray as 40k is. 40k is a mess of morality, but it does make it interesting. It does make it fun. There you go. The Emperor. Now, that does bring us to this right here. So we did, talking about his contingency plans. We did get this last week, and I do want to bring this up before we're done here for the day, because now we can actively talk about it. There was the release last week, and we read it and talked about it, and I've had time to think about it, of the Terminus Codex added to the lore. The Terminus Decree. Held in a simple wooden box that only the Supreme Grand Master may open, the Terminus Decree details the Emperor's final command to the Grey Knights chapter. The Master of Mankind can never be allowed to leave the Golden Throne, either return to life, reborn in another's body, or ascend as some kind of warp entity. And if he does, the Grey Knights must return him to his terrible duty. Indeed, they were created with the possibility of this event in mind, a task beyond the abilities of any other force in the Imperium. The decree offers no guidance on how such feats might be achieved, for it is neither a weapon nor a magic formula. Rather, the Grey Knights would themselves be the weapon on such a desperate day, one that would likely have to cut a path through the ranks of Custodian Guard and many others to see its duty done. There's been a lot of reaction to this revelation from last week, and I've tried to give it some thought. And added with some stuff we got today, the fact that there is a part of the Emperor that exists inside the warp, the remnant of his humanity, that one could think would possibly evolve into an entity of him, into a version of him that might come around. The fact that he is basically stapled to duct tape to the Golden Throne in order to keep the warp at bay. That he might reincarnate, that he might do all this kind of stuff. I ask a question though, and this is based upon looking at other reactions. Could the Grey Knights do this up against the forces that would probably try to stop them from doing this? They don't have the tools apparently to do this. Maybe they do. We don't know about it because we don't know a lot about the Grey Knights. But I both like this and dislike it. You know, I both like this idea and I dislike it. I like it that it adds a little intrigue to the Grey Knight story, but at the same time, I don't like it that, wow, let's just keep the Emperor shackled to the Golden Throne. Part of me doesn't like that. And maybe I'm too much of a novice at dealing with all the 40K lore to make an actual educated statement on this. But this feels like this was a bad thing to let out. And I don't know if this toothpaste can be put back in the tube. So I don't know about this. I both like it and dislike it. Now that I've had a week to think about it. Great not to be crushed for the Emperor seeing a need to destroy them if he ever returned. Because how would they do it? I mean, that's the general question. Because they're just Space Marines, and a custody would annihilate. How would they get through the defenses? How would they get through the defenses surrounding him? And if it was the Emperor Reborn, who's going to stop him? Good point. Good point. Having just talked about that now, that's a good point. So is this a backup plan, or is it a part of the plan to remove something that's no longer needed? So this is something that I don't think needed to be done. I feel like this is Games Workshop tossing a grenade just to see everybody react to it. That's what I feel like after a week of thinking about this. So there you go. I wanted just to bring this back into the conversation, having it happen a week ago. That's what you think? I just think it should never have happened. I mean, I'm not freaking out about it because, again, being a novice of the lore, I don't think I'm educated enough to really feel much of anything. So, like I said, my thoughts are I both like it and dislike it, but in the end, I don't think it should have been released. I don't think it should have been let out. I don't think it should have been described like this. Anyway, so there's that. There we go. All right. It seems we're done. Let's just make sure we got everything here. No super chats popped up. Let's give Stream Elements a check. Nope, we are good. Okay, so we are looking forward to the next couple of days. Tonight, I will be watching at some point The Disaster Artist. And tomorrow we'll get a chat made me watch this review on that. Tonight, at some point, there will be a live stream. Maybe it'll only be 30 minutes. Maybe not. We'll see. Depends on what you guys want to do, where we will be playing House Flipper on Chat Made Me Play This Gaming. I think I was Chat Made Me Play This Gaming. So we'll be doing that. Minimum 30 minutes. And then I'm hoping if that doesn't go too long, we'll play some more Tainted Grail because I am enjoying that. I'd like to continue just having fun and relaxing playing that. There is no Space Marine 2 tonight. That is tomorrow night. Rest of the week, we'll see what happens. Please stay tuned for other videos and clips, mainly these days, unless it's a review or something that happens outside of the stream. Most of the videos are coming from this stream these days because that just makes it easier on me. So if you haven't watched them yet, please go check them out. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you are new here. We are trying to push back against YouTube's basically vicious tactics, taking away my subs for no reason. Anyway, thank you all for being here today. I appreciate each and every one of you, whether you were just hanging out or being active. Your support keeps the channel going. As I said, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys later with another streamer video. Until then, take it easy.